Birkett here, along with Carlos Monarrez. And Carlos, it's franchise tag day around the NFL. And the Detroit Lions did not use the tag on Kenny Golladay like many people thought they would. Certainly wasn't a guarantee, but I know a lot of people around the league thought that Golladay was going to get tagged because he's going to command more money on the open market than that tag was going to be worth. Are you surprised? What do you think about the decision not to tag Kenny Golladay?
I'm not even surprised. I'm shocked. I can't believe that they're letting that cupboard is bare. I mean, you got Quintez Cephas and some mothballs in that wide receiver room. You have a guy who's a Pro Bowler, Pro Bowl caliber, number one receiver threat, who you can control with the franchise tag. The only thing we have to see the rest of the moves play out, but are they waiting for that tag, on Romeo Okwara? Is that possible? Do they need a lot more help on defense? They're going to go cheap on the receiver side, go get some bargain basement deals, maybe guys with, ties to Campbell or Holmes or somewhere else, and then load up, spend a little bit more free agency on defense. Something's fishy about this. I'm totally shocked by it, Dave. What about you?
No tag for Romeo Okwara, so the Lions did not use the tag today. Look, I'm surprised. I would say, a little more than mildly, maybe not to the shocked level that you are, but I certainly thought the right decision for the Lions was to franchise Kenny Golladay and then to look to trade him. I mean, look, I realize that's not a perfect scenario, right? You have to have the $16 million in cap space in order to do that. And Golladay has to sign the tag for you to trade him. But look, the fact of the matter is, the franchise tag is going to be about $16 million. Golladay is going to command $19 million or so on the open market. He is clearly the number one receiver on the open market. Allen Robinson, Chris Godwin, the other top receivers, both tagged by their respective teams today. So you'd have him at a 15% discount is essentially what that amounts to. And I would think you'd be able to get a little something more than a late third round pick in 2022, which you're going to get anyway. That's what you're going to get. A compensatory pick for holding on to, or for letting him go and waiting, to get the compensation. And I think that's the bottom floor that you would have got had you held on to him even till the trade deadline. So if I was the Lions, I would have franchised Golladay, look to make a deal elsewhere. I don't think he fits into the long-term future of this team, just based on, what happened last year and him, seeming like maybe he didn't quite want to be here as much anymore. He wants to get paid more than anything. And I realize maybe it's easier to say a trade was going to happen than it wasn't. But yeah, I'm a little surprised that the Lions did not, given how much emphasis they've put on the future here in this rebuild, that they did not try to get a little bit more than that late third round pick that they're going to get for him in the compensatory phase.
Yeah, I always wonder with this, and you never know what the backroom discussions are, between agents or whoever, intermediaries who represent both sides. And if Golladay was saying, I'm not going to be happy with this, I don't want to play, I'm going to demand, this is the year of demanding trades. The quarterbacks have set that example for the whole NFL. The players are taking the power back and they're standing up and say, I'll go here, I won't go there. And Golladay may have said, do you want another season of me getting hurt? Do you want me to hold out during camp? Do you want me to be a problem? You're going to spend all that money and it's going to be fruitless. Now, I think that Lions should have kept him because under the franchise, because it gives you that flexibility. And Jared Goff's got to have somebody to throw to. I mean, that's not going to be fair to Goff. Honestly, I want to see what this guy still has. I want to see if he can, have a second part to his career. And without anybody to throw to, it's not really going to be a fair assessment for Goff. And I think Golladay, he could have been an option early and up until, and I think you said, up until the trade deadline, they may have gotten a third round pick for him if they traded him. I think that'd be more than that. I mean, if Galladay's.
No, that was the minimum. I'm with you. I think they could get more. Just that's the minimum that they would have gotten, right? You already know what the floor is. You're getting a late third round pick. So you're going to get something more if you trade him.
Right. And it's like, when late October comes, the trade deadline comes, and especially if it's going to be a 17-game season, you got more games ahead of you. Somebody loses their number one receiver or they're down, some pass catcher somewhere, a contending team. maybe the Rams. They might be able to, work out a little bit of money here to give, Matthew Stafford has never had enough weapons, Dave. We can't let poor little Matthew Stafford not have enough weapons. So maybe Brad Holmes could have swung a deal with Les Snead or somebody over there at the Rams. I think they could have gotten a 2, maybe even a 1 if someone was desperate enough and Golladay was having a good season. However, we don't know all the backroom talks and whether Golladay said, I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to sign the tag and whatever, even though he told us he would sign the tag, who knows? That's all kind of just empty, PR talk sometimes at the end of the season. But I'm disappointed that they're basically getting nothing until a 3rd round pick in 2 years from now.
Yeah. And look, I mean, let's be honest, that a 3rd round pick in 2022, it's not nothing, right? I mean, the way this franchise is building and looking toward the future, they're going to have 2 first round picks next year. They have 1 second right now. They'll have 2 thirds, assuming they get that compensatory pick for Golladay and they don't go, sign a like free agent, in free agency. But so I think they're doing a lot of things right in terms of looking for the future and building for the future. I would have liked to see them keep Golladay, and we'll see, how they decide to allocate that money or those resources now that they didn't do that, because Romeo Okwara is a free agent. Maybe there's another compensatory pick there. Maybe they sign a defensive end to replace him. I mean, you got to have some players on the field, and as I look at the Lions right now, I don't think this team is going to be very good, next year. We've talked about that already. And so, I think you do have to prepare yourself for some, to take some lumps. But Carlos, you're right. If this franchise has any designs on Jared Goff potentially being the guy, you have to make sure that he has some weapons, right? He has to have a running game. You got to have an offensive line to protect him a little bit. You got to have some people to throw to. And right now, as you mentioned, it's Quintez Cephas, it's Terrell Williams with 1 shoulder. I mean, we'll see how, he's coming off the leg room surgery. So we'll see what he's like in year 2. TJ Hawkinson, but they're going to have to go out and sign a receiver in free agency, draft a receiver or 2. I mean, Josh Reynolds from the Rams is a free agent. Maybe there's a connection there. I don't know that Reynolds was entirely happy being the number 3 option in LA, but I don't know that was totally Jared Goff's fault either. And then in the draft, I mean, number 7 pick in the draft, there are 4 offensive skill players or big skill players that are going to go probably in the top 10 or 12 picks. So Lions could have their choice of at least maybe 3 of Jamar Chase, Kyle Pitts, Jalen Waddle, Devontae Smith. So there are some options there. And I think they need to add, one of those players to this mix to at least have some sort of offensive weapons to make this a fathomable, an offense that's worth watching, because right now, there's just a lot of work to do on that side of the ball.
And that's what I thought a little bit was could be a signal they're planning to take a receiver, high. I read somewhere, I don't know if it was Peter King or someone, or Daniel Jeremiah was talking about this, that maybe the receiver's kind of going a little bit of the way of the running back, where maybe you don't have to go super high in the 1st round. I mean, Golladay himself was a 3rd pick, so you don't have to go that high to get quality receivers. If you want an elite Calvin Johnson, those kind of guys, yes, if you identify a Jerry Rice type of receiver, yes. And
let's talk about that point for a sec, because I think we've glossed over that here before talking about that, Carlos. But I have started to believe, lean that way too, that look, there are some very elite receivers out there, right? I mean, some guys that can be true difference makers. You mentioned Kelvin, the Julio Jones, the DeAndre Hopkins, some of these guys. But, even then, DeAndre Hopkins gets traded last year. The value of the position, it's still very valuable, but you play 3 of them a lot of times, and you are able to get some pretty good guys later in the draft. Daniel Jeremiah on his conference call today said this is a case where the receiver depth is going to go into round 4 or 5. And certainly the receiver you're getting in round 5 is probably not what you're getting in round 1, but especially at the top of round 1. But Chris Godwin, 2nd or 3rd round pick. I think it was 2nd. Kenny Golladay, 3rd round pick. Allen Robinson, 2nd round pick. Those were the 3 receivers that were talked about being franchised. The 2 of them were, and that were at the top of the receiver class. So there are some very good receivers that you can get. You don't necessarily need to spend, a top of the draft pick on one, but I think if you do, that player can be a difference maker. And it may be a case where, given the Lions options at the number 7 pick in the draft, where that's something that they may have to do.
And the other question I had about that was, I don't know if, one thing we have yet to see is how this culture is going to bear out. They're building a whole new culture with the Lions, and Golladay fit in that culture. I brought that up before, and if you're going to pay somebody that kind of money as a franchise player, and he's not going to be happy, he's going to be one of your star players. Do you want that? Is that how you want to kick off this whole rebuild, with an unhappy camper? So I can see where there may be something else to just him as a player, just him as a performer. And maybe you need, we've seen this before when they brought in guys like Nate Burleson, guys, free agents, not top of the market guys, but culture fit guys who help process of moving the team forward. It's not always just about the numbers. It's what they do and how they help the team move forward. And this is not a team that's going to be good this year and competitive, probably not next year either. So do you really want to be spending that money on a guy and having this whole issue? You're going to have the whole question again next year about, we would bug Golladay all year about, do you want to sign a long-term deal? Starting with some reporter over here who's a little tentative or tenacious D, I call you. So
over here. I was looking to see.
So that's he's over there somewhere. Look for him. So I can kind of see that. The question is, and we'll have to look into Brad Holmes's background as far as how intuitive, how crafty he is at finding his kind of, I think one of the calling cards he's talked about is undrafted free agents. That's kind of what he's talked a little bit more about, of having an eye for that kind of stuff. Coming from the college side, obviously, but you're going to have to find those gems in the third, fourth round. And it's only a couple of GMs ago where Martin Mayhew just could not find playmakers outside of the set. Theo Riddick was the one guy, but he could not find offensive playmakers outside of the second round. It's not that easy. But the offensive rules favor, I think that's one reason that receivers are better now, is offensive rules really skew toward, or NFL rules skew toward to the offense. So I'll be interested to see how they plug up these holes, because you can't just let Golladay go and not replace him with some kind of reasonable option for Jared Goff.
Right. No, look, you mentioned Brad Holmes, his track record in the middle rounds, and look, I don't know that it's his track record. It's Les Snead making the picks, but certainly he had a large, part in the evaluation as college scouting director. And he did. There were some good picks by the Rams, right? John Johnson, the safety, who's a free agent now. Samson Ebukam, I'm not sure if I'm saying the last name right. But the linebacker that played a good deal for them this year. Taylor Rapp was he was a mid-round pick, if I'm not mistaken. They've certainly found some guys in those middle rounds that have contributed to the success that they've had. And you're right, that's what the Lions are going to have to do. And really, that's what the Lions are banking on. And that's good. I like the direction this rebuild has gone. I don't have any issue with that. I just thought franchising Golladay would allow them to, maybe expedite that a little bit by getting a slightly better pick, or getting two picks, right? Maybe you get a 3 and a 6 or a 3 and a 5. Maybe there's something extra that you get for holding on to Golladay and dealing him. So not the worst decision in the world that they didn't do it, because I didn't view him as this long-term, this pillar of their rebuild, somebody that they were going to keep around. But I thought there was more value in getting him under market value contract that you could then, transfer that to a slightly higher draft pick than what you're going to get. But Carlos, I want to throw this out there. All right. So there's nine players that have been franchised reportedly so far. I haven't seen the official list from the NFL, but I wrote them down here. The two receivers, I'm sorry, Chris Godwin, Allen Robinson, three safeties, Marcus Williams, who, some people thought was a fit for the Lions. He certainly has some ties to Aaron Glenn and Dan Campbell. Won't be a Lion now. Justin Simmons from the Broncos, Marcus May from the Jets. And then you got a couple offensive linemen, Taylor Moton, the former Western Michigan tackle, Cam Robinson, Brandon Scherf. Maybe is there anyone I'm missing? Leonard Williams is the other one. So, I think there were maybe a few surprises, outside of Golladay. I thought Aaron Jones might get tagged from Green Bay. And certainly that goes to maybe where where teams are at with the salary cap. And I know there's still some hope that, in Green Bay, that they get a deal done there with Aaron Jones. I think the Lions are they're cognizant of the situation with Golladay and realize that he's going to be gone. But as we look ahead towards free agency now, I mean, I think you have to wonder, how aggressive the Lions are going to be, what they're going to do, if they're going to get, as we talked about before, that Nate Burleson type guy that you had just mentioned, Carlos, right? That Kyle Vandenbosch type guy that can be a tone setter, that is not going to break the bank, but that can be somebody that you start, building around, or have to instill the culture that you want in the locker room. And I mentioned John Johnson before. He's a safety. I think he would fit for the Lions and what they want to do. There's certainly some ties in there with Brad Holmes and with the Aubrey Pleasant, the Lions' new secondary coach as well. So I think there's a lot of options there. Trey Hendrickson, a defensive lineman from New Orleans, certainly could play that Romeo Okwara role depending on what they want to do. Those are just a couple names I wanted to throw out there for people to keep an eye on if you're looking for that Nate Burleson type, Kyle Vandenbosch type when free agency opens next week.
Let me ask you this. Let's look internally for the Lions. If you're, two questions I have. Which position group is in more tatters, the linebacker position group or the receiver position group? You can answer that one, but also if you're the offense, if you're, TJ Hawkinson, if you're DeAndre Swift, if you're Taylor Decker, what kind of message do you feel today that the team, this new regime, has given you, that we're letting one of our best players, one of our only real weapons on offense go? Like, how do you feel if you're Taylor Decker and DeAndre said, how do you feel about that? And also which position group is more screwed up, the receiver or the linebacker?
That's a good question, especially, about how the locker room feels, because that's something that, I've always sort of, you have to wonder how that ends, right? These guys have short careers and they want to win. Yeah, they want to get paid, and that's primary for a lot of people, but they want to win too. And especially a guy like Taylor Decker, who just signed a long-term extension, right? And now he's going to be here for the next 4 years. And the first year or two, you're guaranteed to be in a rebuilding state. And you don't know exactly what the future is going to hold for you beyond that. And look, again, the organization is doing the right thing, right? I mean, this is a rebuild, and whether they had Golladay on the franchise tag or not, it was going to be a rebuild. And I think most players are probably smart enough to realize that, right? And hey, look, he's here for 1 year, and they can see the writing on the wall, and they know what we know, right? You look at the age of somebody, you look at the state the team is in, and it's not, you can see down the road a little bit. And to that point, I think the Matthew Stafford move was the one that maybe shook the locker room up a little bit more, because he was liked in that locker room, right? The offensive line loved him, right? His receivers loved him. That's part of the reason Kenny Golladay last year, and I would say probably the biggest part of the reason why Kenny Golladay said he wanted to stay last year, was because of Matthew Stafford and the chance to play with him. And he's not here now. And so that, the Lions are sort of looked at in a whole different light without him being here. So I think it cuts both ways there, Carlos. I do, when it comes to, how the locker room looks at this Golladay move. Certainly for some players, it's, I got 1 year left here or 2 years left, and we're going to be in rebuilding mode. And I don't know what that means for me. But, there are some opportunities. And I think from the front office standpoint, the organizational standpoint, you have to look at it and say, this is the, not having him be a part of the long-term, future here is the right thing to do for where this franchise is and where they're headed. And what was your second question? My old age, I'm forgetting some of these things. I'm sorry.
Linebackers and receivers.
Linebackers, yeah.
Which groups screwed up?
I would say the receiver room is in more of a world of hurt right now, and neither one of them are good at all, right? Neither one of them are in good shape at all. But linebacker, you got Jamie Collins, so you have one of probably 3 starters, right? In receiver room, you have Quintez Cephas and Terrell Williams. And again, Terrell Williams, I know he played well for Anthony Lynn a couple of years ago. Really had his best season before Anthony Lynn was there, so that was a while ago. Obviously was injured last year and had injured the last 2 years, really. So we'll see what he has. We haven't seen enough of Quintez Cephas to know what he's going to be. But I think the Lions really, you probably still need 3 starters or 2 starters at least to feel comfortable there. So to me, receiver is the biggest need on this team still. But I mean, that's splitting hairs, man. This defense needs a lot of help, and I think it wouldn't be wrong to for them to allocate some resources to that linebacker room here in free agency either. And the other question with that, Carlos, too, is if they are going with a 3-4, right? And I know Aaron Glenn said it's going to be he's not married to one scheme, and they're going to have elements of everything. But if they are going to a 3-4, then you probably need 4 linebackers, right? I mean, I know you're playing a lot of sub package, and so you'll have 2 or 3 on the field in a lot of situations, but who are your other starters right now? And Jelani Tavai, I mean, that, Jamie Collins, Jelani Tavai, and then a couple of, futures guys is basically what you have at the linebacker room. So if I'm looking for a place in free agency, even though I've advocated John Johnson and Trey Hendrickson as being guys that could be sort of a staple of a tone setter for this rebuild, those are certainly the 2 areas that are the biggest areas of need. And I'll throw one other former Saints name out there too. Sheldon Rankins is another guy that I think he's the type of good locker room guy, could be a player for this team, or they could be a player for him, I should say.
I'm just checking my notes. Yeah, I think you've named every player in the NFL, Dave. So yeah, we're good.
Just the ones with ties.
Any player in the NFL.
Yeah.
Well, let me ask you. I want to see. They're doing all these. Things are barely starting right now, right? I want to see where they're going to start allocating some resources, as you said. I'm curious to see if Brad Holmes is going to just try to, Ellie Rams this thing and build it from defense. Let's go defense. This is the thing that's struggling. I mean, to me, the Kenny Golladay is a tiny little hint that maybe we're not going to emphasize offense. Maybe we need to have a defense. Defense wins championships. We need our core guys. We need to spend there. These are the guys who are going to, make the difference. Here's the guys who made the difference against the Seahawks in the playoffs. When we didn't have a quarterback against the Seahawks, we somehow won because of defense. So, it's not a bad way to go. I'm not saying that, but I'm just saying there's going to be an identity for this team, and oddly enough, under Patricia, it was the offense was much better than the defense. So is it going to be the defense? I want to see where they start spending some cash and some resources.
Well, I think they need to spend some resources on defense because they just don't have much there. But I don't know that that's going to be – look, it's going to be the identity until you find your quarterback, right? And so we don't know if Jared Goff is the guy. We don't know if they draft the guy. But ultimately, you got to have the quarterback to have sustained success in this league. And so, if Jared Goff becomes that guy, if they draft Trey Lance and – he's this exciting quarterback, 2 years from now. I mean, the team is going to be built around that player. But, in the short term, until then, I mean, maybe it is. The one problem with that is you look at this year's draft, and even at number 7, I don't know that there's a defensive player that you take to build around, right? I mean, you look at, the draftniks, right? The Mel Kipers of the world. You talk to the scouts, you do a little digging on sort of the strength of the draft. And I don't know that there really are any blue chip defensive players. Micah Parsons, the linebacker from Penn State, is the closest one. And there's a little bit of a debate about what he is, but really it's a couple of the quarterbacks. It's the offensive tackles. It's Kyle Pitts, the tight end, and it's a couple of the receivers. So the strength of this draft really is on the offensive side of the ball. So I don't know that there's going to be that Aaron Donald there for the Lions to get, right? That Jalen Ramsey for the Lions to get. And maybe they develop Jeff Okuda. Maybe he becomes, their Jalen Ramsey. Maybe you don't have to do it all in 1 year. So maybe they do find that defensive player at some point. But I think they will still be looking for that quarterback until they have it. And that top draft pick, whether it's this year, next year, whatever, at some point they're going to have to use that top draft pick on that position.
So I'm pretty sure you're basically telling our editors to put a headline on this that says Dave Birkett says draft tight end number 7 overall, right? Is that what you're angling for?
Just wait till my next mock draft comes out. We'll see. The TJ Hawkinson, Kyle Pitts offense, it may, it's not going to have much there's not going to be many, 50-yard bombs of these guys. And I don't know how exciting it's going to be, but, they'll run with the tight end mismatch offense and really try to put it to teams that way. So, we'll see. I mean, honestly, look, the Kyle Pitts thing, it's intriguing because I don't know what I had in my first mock draft going, 10 or 12 or something. I just think I knocked him down a little bit based on position, but you talk to people and they do think Kyle Pitts is a special player. And I don't know that he's a receiver, but I don't know that he's that far off from a receiver either, So Jamar Chase is the number one, let's say non-quarterback, offensive player in this draft. But Kyle Pitts may be number two. He's up there. And so I don't know, man. If you're the Lions, I don't know that I would totally rule it out at number 7. I know how fans would feel, and I think it'd probably be better for the Lions to get a receiver, a burner like Jalen Waddle, right? You got to have some deep speed to really build this offense right. But let's keep Kyle Pitts, in the mix at least for now.
I could see Kyle Pitts and TJ Hawkinson would be their Gronk and Aaron Hernandez. I mean, what could go wrong with that? That's a winning formula. It's proven. Let's just do that. Brad Holmes, I'm sure you're watching this. If you draft Kyle Pitts, I will guarantee you an A grade. I don't care. You're a tight end, number 7 overall. You're getting an A from me on draft day. So no worries. You've got my support. I'm here for you, Brad. Let's make it happen.
Brad, if you're watching this, just answer my text. Okay. I want to hear back from you on the Golladay stuff. But no, beyond that, look, the 2 tight end thing, right? Like the Eagles had Zach Ertz and then they drafted Dallas Goedert in the first round. I think it was the first round, a couple of years ago. And now they're trading Ertz. You know what I mean? Like, so is there room for 2 tight ends to be making all that money at some point, right? Hawkinson is entering year 3. So he's a year away from needing an extension. So if you draft Kyle Pitts, does that then mean that you're going to get rid of TJ Hawkinson in 2 years? I don't know the answer to that. I guess I'm just, as I'm thinking about these things long term, that's one of the things that comes up. And to me, that's why, even though I think Kyle Pitts, again, I've started to warm to that idea of maybe the Lions taking him, I still think, 7 weeks out from the draft or whatever we are, that and not knowing how this roster is going to look, that maybe the right move would be, assuming Jamar Chase isn't there, because again, he's the best non-quarterback in the draft, that getting that guy like a Jalen Waddle who really can stretch the field, and that opens things up for your pretty good tight end that you already have in TJ Hawkinson.
Yeah, I don't see a need. I mean, let's not forget they're still paying Jesse James, who's not earning his contract, but they're still paying him. I don't really think you need 2 tight ends unless you had some crazy, Mike Martz offensive scheme that was really going to utilize them. And I think the way that happened with the Patriots too was they were picking the best player available, and
they were down in the draft too, right? I mean, let's be honest. Both those guys were later round picks. They had fallen because of, the other thing that we have to consider here, Carlos, with Detroit, they got a tight end as a coach, right? I mean, Dan Campbell is a tight end. So I don't know. Maybe that factors into their mindset as they're building the team here at the end of the day.
3 tight end sets, Dave. We're going to see 3 all tight ends all the time. You just can't. They're just going to be all over the field. H backs. You're going to see. We're going to bring back Casey Fitzsimmons to coach the tight ends. It's going to be wondrous. I think that I want to see. There's 2 things. I get the feeling right now, that I get the sense they want to trade down. They want to get rid of this pick and accumulate more draft picks. The Kenny Golladay thing kind of makes me feel that they're okay with getting a 3rd round pick in 2 years, or next year rather. Like they're stockpiling right now. Like they know it's not going to happen. Yeah, it's not going to happen. Let's stockpile as much as we can. Like, they're listening to Dave Birkett, they're reading your stuff. They know that there's no great transformative player out there other than, Trevor Lawrence. Nobody's out there. There's no Aaron Donald. There's no, Jake Long. There's no stud out there that's going to change the fortunes of your team in the next year.
You just went to Jake Long.
So let's kick the can.
You went to Jake Long over
wasn't he number 1 overall?
Yeah, he was number 1 overall.
Pretty good.
He's a good player, but I wouldn't go 12 years back to figure out.
Joe Thomas. All right. Joe Thomas.
Joe Thomas.
Joe Thomas, okay.
Kelvin, there's lots of options that you could go. But hey, that's all right. That's all right. JJ Watt, whatever. Anyways. You're good. Go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt.
Yeah, I mean, there. If nothing's going to happen this year, right? Let's hold on. Let's bide our time and stockpile. And if they don't do that, if they can't trade down or whatever, which I'm assuming they would be able to out of 7, but let's just say they couldn't. I hate to say it, but best player available, right? I mean, maybe it is Chase. Maybe it is a quarterback. I mean, if you don't know what you're going to be this year, if you've got too many holes to fill, if you don't find the right trade equivalency on the Johnson chart, go get a good player. Good player will never hurt you. Maybe quarterback doesn't quite fit that mold because, that's going to be a few years down the road. But I don't have a problem with that. I mean, they could, at this point, they could kind of almost go anywhere other than tight end. I'd love to see it. So, yeah, this is an interesting. You really, I really was surprised just because they seem to be into the whole, bargaining chips and let's get our draft picks in order and all this. I'm a little surprised, a little disappointed they just couldn't get more out of Golladay. But I don't know, maybe they draft the next Golladay next year, right?
Yeah. Look, I think as you said, the bottom line is they're stockpiling assets for the future because they know when their window of competitiveness is going to be, right? It's going to be a couple of years from now. Aaron Rodgers is going to be a couple of years older, Green Bay, maybe not, they're keeping their fingers crossed that Jordan Love isn't the heir apparent, and the NFC North will be wide open, and then they'll have all these picks come in and these young guys maturing at the same time. And so, again, to me, not franchising Golladay is, I would have franchised them, surprised by it. Not going to kill the Lions for it because I don't, he wasn't going to be a part of the long-term, future here. Even though he had the big lion tattooed on his back that he showed off on Instagram, and even though he's got the blue seats in his Mercedes or whatever he's driving these days, they look kind of Honolulu blue. So there's a lot of lions to what's going on. But look, he's going to make a lot of money in free agency, so he can go rip out his interior, get all new seats if he wants, and he'll be just fine. And I think he's going to be a wealthy man wherever he lands, because he's going to sign a contract that's worth more than the Lions would have paid him in free agency. And, maybe he'll go to a team, I don't know, but maybe he'll go to a team that's more competitive than the Lions will be next year too. And, the Lions they'll take their 3rd round count pick next year and happily use that to maybe move up in the draft and take a swing at a quarterback. We'll see. One thing we do know is with all the picks that they should have next year, they will be in a position to move around and get what they want. So they can, do some maneuvering to go ahead and build this thing, how, the vision that they have for it. And it's up to Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell to execute it. And, everyone's going to give them a pass on this year because we know exactly what they're going to be, which is, probably not a very good team. But, before long, you're going to have to see some payoff on this building process. And so that's going to be up to Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell to make that happen.
The last thing I'll say about that is just, I don't know what I'm sure what the cap situation is for every NFL team, but the only thing that could go wrong here is if he ends up a Packer or a Viking. That would be hard to see. And when you could just see Aaron Rodgers throwing a 80-yard bomb or something to Golladay in the end zone right here at Ford Field next year.
Carlos, that is a very good point. Look, we all know the Packers still need receivers, and now look, Alan Lazard, it's kind of their big guy, big body guy. I don't know Green Bay's cap situation. I know there are plenty of teams that have more cap, right? The Jets, the Jaguars. Some of these teams that are really, really have a lot of money to go out and work with. I would think they would probably be in the mix for a Golladay. But there's certainly the chance that the Lions will be seeing him again next year. And we don't get any opposing player conference calls anymore, but it'll be interesting to see what he says that week for his opposing team if that happens. Because certainly for a minute, it looked like the Lions were going to get a deal done with him last year. Everything went crazy with the pandemic. The numbers went down. He felt lowballed. He felt disrespected by the contract offer. And that's where we are, why we are where we are now, with the Lions letting Kenny Golladay walk in free agency, or letting him reach free agency at least. Let's not jump too far ahead of ourselves. Not using the franchise tag on him, and perhaps dedicating those resources elsewhere. Find out soon enough on that, Carlos. We'll find out next week when free agency opens what the Lions do there. So that'll do it for us. We just wanted to talk a little Kenny Golladay, talk a little Lions free agency. And again, free agency opens March 17th. I do expect the Lions to make some moves. Not going to be a bunch of top of the market guys, but they've got some holes to fill on this roster. And so we will see Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell get to work filling those spots. For Carlos Monarrez, I'm Dave Birkett, Freak.com.